Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today and taking time out of your day to learn a little bit about Artist Space Trust. My name is Kiana Ellis, and my colleague and I, Sharmi Basu, are going to be running this presentation. Sharmi's going to be taking care of you all in the chat. I believe that the Q&A is open, and so at any point, if you have questions, go ahead and feel free to use the Q&A. And if they're not addressed in the slides, we'll get into it in the conversation after the presentation is done. So it looks like folks are still showing up. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourselves in the chat, that would be great. If you're artists, let us know what kind of art you make. We'd just like to get a sense of who's in the room with us. You could also let us know if you know anything about community land trusts already. We're going to be going over some basics and how Artist Space Trust is specifically addressing artists as our target community. So it looks like we have a decent amount of people in the room already. I'm sure more will show up as we continue on, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. So welcome to Artists Are Foundational, Artist Space Trust and the CLT model for affordable housing solutions. My name is Kiana Ellis. I work with AST, and Sharmi Basu, the Executive Director of Vital Arts, is also here with us. Once again, if you have any questions and you want to introduce yourself, you can use the chat, or if you have questions about AST as we go along, go ahead and use the Q&A feature so that we can have them all in one place and we can really dive into the discussion at the end. So first and foremost, Sharmi's going to start us off with our land acknowledgement, so I will let them do that.
Hello, everyone. So excited to be here with you all and support this exciting launch of AST to this new community. We in all of the work that we're doing, we're really trying to bring in the acknowledgement of our land, the acknowledgement to the stewards of our land. I will invite everyone who is in the presentation and in the chat to, if you haven't before, look up your own the land that you are currently occupying as well. I just dropped a link in the chat called nativeland.ca. That's kind of our little go-to. I'm calling in from the Chochenyo speaking Ohlone, the Ohlone land, also known as Oakland, California. And I'm just going to go ahead and read this acknowledgement for you all. Artist Space Trust acknowledges that we exist on land that was stolen from its indigenous occupants and forcibly colonized for the purpose of resource control and financial profit. In this process, the land and people that belong to it were displaced, subjected to cruel and inhumane treatment, including forced migration, enslavement, and the stripping of their rights and destruction of their cultural identity. We recognize that this imperialist and colonial destruction is ongoing and urge you to support Indigenous organizations and individuals who are working to repair their legacies and lineages. Some of the tribes who historically occupied this land include the Chochenyo, Ohlone, Karkin, Ohlone, Bay Miwok, Plains Miwok, Delta Yokut, and Napian Patwin. And I'm sorry if I pronounced any of those wrongs. Back to you.
Thank you so much, Sharmi. And I see some of you have already been in the chat, but if you haven't, this would be a great time if you could let us know your name, where you're calling in from, if you're an artist, and if you have a business name, or if you're calling in from an organization, and whether or not you rent or own your housing. So a little bit about us. My name is Kiana Ellis. I go by she, her pronouns. I am Administrative and Outreach Associate for Artist Space Trust, and I'm one of only 2 full-time staff here at AST, so it's a small but mighty team. I'm a visual artist, and I originally came from Sacramento. I moved to Oakland in 2008 to study metalsmithing, writing, and photography at the California College of the Arts. And since coming to the Bay, I've lived and worked in pretty much every aspect of the local art scene here, aside from government. I have been a small business owner. I worked as a goldsmith, production assistant for a number of small businesses in the East Bay and in San Francisco. And I've also been an educator at local orgs. I teach metalsmithing at the Crucible. I taught photography at Hacker Lab in Sacramento. And I even had a year-long stint where I was an art lab coordinator at Meta headquarters in Menlo Park. And I see you there, Phoebe, in the audience, one of my coworkers here. So I'm incredibly lucky to have as my mentor local artist Angela Hennessy, and I participated in residencies at Ashara Ekundayo Gallery here in Oakland and at the Mendocino Art Center. I also completed the 2023 Oakland Cultural Strategists in Government Programs Public Art Workshop Series. So you can see some of my work at my website, kianaellis.studio. And now I'll let Sharmi introduce themselves.
Hi everyone. So exciting to see so many familiar faces in the chat. My name is Sharmi. I use they, them pronouns. I am currently the executive director at Vital Arts, who is a co-founder with Northern California Land Trust of Artist Space Trust. I have been, working in the arts and as an artist and punk and organizer for well over a decade. I am primarily a sound artist, performance artist. I have worked at SF MoMA and Southern Exposure and was on the board of Soundwave SF and am currently on the board of Bay Area Girls Rock Camp and Safer DIY Spaces. Um, and yeah, you can, my primary project is called Beast Nest. I'm sure at some point someone will see me somewhere because I continue to perform pretty often. And yeah, just very continually dedicated to finding artists, resources, space, home in the Bay Area, especially in the aftermath of the Ghost Ship fire and, the kind of ongoing gentrification of Bay Area. So yeah, that's me.
So I really wanted to start this conversation and this discussion in the imagination space. And so in the coming slides, you'll learn a little bit about the challenges that artists are facing right now, and some of you may be living those challenges. But right now, I just want to ask the question, what if instead of expecting artists to struggle, we created spaces for them to live and create in comfort? So I'm sure everyone's aware of the notion of the starving artist and the idea that that struggle is what makes art good. But I just really want to disrupt that idea because I think it's very unfair and it inherently privileges people who have more stability as artists. And I think we don't think about that enough. So, what would it really look like if art and artists were truly valued and their stability was seen as a real priority in society? So, what might be possible, and what would this look like in public spaces and schools and in our own lives? So, a little bit about Artist Space Trust. We're the first community land trust in the US devoted entirely to securing permanently affordable housing and creative space for artists. We believe that providing access to affordable spaces for artists and equity building homeownership opportunities ensures the health, stability, and vitality of our diverse Bay Area communities for generations to come. AST is a joint program of Vital Arts and Northern California Land Trust. And we occupy a very special place inside the Bay Area nonprofit landscape. We sit right at the juncture of artists and housing, and we seek to support and uplift a very inspiring and powerful community that is incredibly diverse and chronically underfunded. So I'm going to discuss a little bit about what a community land trust is and why it's important that AST is targeting artists as our community in the coming slides. But first, I'm going to introduce you to our incubation partners, Vital Arts and NCLT. So as the executive director of Vital Arts, I'm going to hand this one over to Sharmi.
Um, Hello everyone. Yeah, so excited to continually be working with Artist Space Trust and really dreaming about what collective ownership for artists looks like in the Greater Bay Area. Vital Arts is a little bit of a is within this housing context, a little bit on the more direct artist mediation side, I would say. We were founded to honor the victims of the ghost ship fire by working to ensure safe, affordable spaces for artists to live, work, and perform. So we're not just working with housing, we're also working with collective space and community gathering space. What Vital Arts really works with is the the ability for artists to be directly connected to these advocacy and education resources. Beyond just resource and information sharing, we do direct navigation with artists. We recently have launched the Artist Displacement Prevention Grant, which was able to provide transition funds towards artists who are facing imminent displacement, including homelessness and impending eviction. We are really deeply embedded in artist mobilization work currently, and part of that is also data sovereignty and data gathering. And so we had this artist displacement data tracking project that launched a couple of years ago and are now launching a regional Bay Area artist census. In addition to that, we're highly involved in advocacy work. So working with the city of Berkeley, the city of Oakland, Californians for the Arts, and, all of you trying to really materialize what, as we kind of move beyond the artists in struggle narrative, also, materialize what that struggle actually looks like right now. So, yeah, that's us.
Thank you. So our other partner is the Northern California Land Trust. They're a community land trust that was founded in 1973, and their mission is to incubate, develop, support permanently affordable housing on community-owned and governed land throughout the Bay Area. So they advocate, house, incubate, and consult. And right now they have 118 units across 24 properties, and they represent $40 to $50 million of equity that is governed by community. So right now, AST is in its pilot phase. We launched in 2023, and since then we've done quite a lot, but we're still just beginning this work. And so right now, Northern California Land Trust is our daily partner. They actually incubate us as an organization, and we're part of their team. And they bring a lot of CLT knowledge, 50 years of resident management experience, and then just a really wide range of coalition building networks that AST can benefit from right now while we're getting started in this. And as Sharmi was saying, Vital Arts really brings the research and advocacy portion of our partnership, and they are deeply involved in making sure that we're engaging with the correct communities, and they will also be guiding our artist selection when it comes time to sort through applicants for our properties. So we imagine that this incubation phase will take 5 years, but it could be a little bit longer than that. It kind of just depends on the amount of support that we get during this time. So some of you may be new to community land trusts, and so I'm going to go through a quick overview of what community land trusts are. So community land trusts provide a sustainable solution to the housing challenges faced by low-income individuals, and for us, this includes artists and cultural workers.
I've been watching all y'all how them up with y'all do for that pussy.
All right.
You a fucking strong nigga. Look, I want to do a thing for that pussy, bitch. No,
Sorry for that interruption, folks.
That's the first time I've ever been hacked in a Zoom.
All right. So community land trusts they're nonprofit organizations, and they're governed by a diverse board, which includes CLT residents, community members, and public representatives. They ensure that homes remain permanently affordable so this is like in perpetuity, and prioritize the interests of their community. So how this works is CLTs have a portfolio of options ranging from rental to ownership opportunities. And when a CLT brings a property into its portfolio, it splits the deed. The CLT retains ownership of the land and stewards that for many generations. And it also places restrictions on what happens on the land, so keeping the property reserved for low-income tenants and owners. CLT properties are offered at rental rates and purchase prices that are far below the market rate, and this remains true as the property passes from one tenant owner to another. So in the case of AST, artists will have the opportunity to rent or purchase housing and creative space. In the scenario of a purchase, the artist is buying the improvements on the house. So this is like the buildings, and so that all that they invest in the property will come back to them when it is sold again, or if it is sold again. There will be some limited equity gain, but it won't be as much as it would on a regular house sale. So the property will never be sold on the speculative market or regular housing market ever again. And so this keeps the price below what we normally see for a regular housing purchase. So I just want to acknowledge that we're going to get into a whole bunch of data now. And so I'm going to what we're trying to do is really visualize what artists are facing in the Bay Area landscape. And so there's going to be a lot of numbers and percentages coming at you. And so my goal is to just explain them as clearly as possible, and then we can talk about it more at the end if you want. So California is really a creative powerhouse. We represent a staggering portion of the gross regional product, $507.4 billion generated in 2021. All of this data is coming from the Otis College report on the creative economy that they released in 2023, and much of the data is based on 2021 numbers. So California's creative industries are really crucial for the cultural vibrancy and diversity of our state. Our entertainment industry alone is a global driver of culture, and its workforce is not just like the faces that we see on screens or in movie theaters. It's really everybody behind that as well. It's the writers, the set designers, the animators, video game artists, designers, as well as muralists, makers, Etsy sellers, and educators. And these are really the backbone of our creative output as a state. So this is a snapshot of California's creative workforce. The creative industry employs over 2.6 million people, and it accounts for 8% of the total jobs in the state. This includes a wide range of professions, from artists and designers to technical roles in film and TV. And as you can see, the vast majority of these workers are independent, meaning they're largely contract workers. And this often means little to no long-term income security or workplace benefits like access to healthcare. And despite adding collectively billions in goods and services to the state economy and in tax revenue and global culture, the annual wages for Californian artists largely fall under $75K per year, with fine and performing arts earning an average of only $43,000. So you can see that entertainment industry average is much higher than fine and performing arts, creative goods, and etc. Like that's largely because you see really large salaries at the director level and in production, and it does not filter all the way down to the people who are the ones creating the visual effects and things like that. So that skews these numbers a little bit. Your average artist is probably more in line with that little bar that shows fine and performing arts. And this is who we would most likely think of when we say the word artist. And we can see that this average person is making about $43,000 a year. And that would be your writers, painters, photographers, sculptors, just on average. So this is stacked against what's called the area median income, or the AMI. And this is a key metric in affordable housing. So the area median income is defined as the midpoint of a specific area's income distribution, and it's calculated annually by the Department of Housing and Urban Development. And it's really important because many of the programs that HUD has are based on the value for the area that you live in. And so this is the number where if you make below this, they consider you low income. So in the Bay Area, we know that high salaries from the tech industry really skew our averages higher than the national average, and probably more than most people make. But even compared to numbers from Sacramento, which doesn't have that huge community of high income earners, we can see that the average artist in California makes a lot less than what is considered low income. So this is low or very low income. And when this comes to buying houses, as I'm sure many of you know, it's also extremely difficult against the prices that we have here in the Bay. So the Bay Area is one of the most expensive places in the entire nation to buy a home. Even New York doesn't get as high as we do, which was surprising to me when I was doing this research. So on the screen, you can see a cost comparison between the year 2000 and 2021 on the median home cost. And in the Bay Area, that median home cost rose 70%. And salaries did not raise 70%. So this number directly aligns with findings from a 2015 survey by the SF Arts Commission that found that 70% of artists who responded to their survey were actively being displaced or afraid of being displaced from their workplace, home, or both. So artists love living in the Bay Area because we have so much culture and we have a lot of creative opportunities here. But as you can see, there are a lot of cities where it's much more affordable to buy if you want to take that next step in kind of stabilizing how much you're paying for rent or mortgage. So we have a huge risk of losing our culture makers through displacement into cheaper cities if the Bay and California in general doesn't invest in more affordable housing solutions that specifically support artists and their needs. So we just have a little bit more data to go through, but I really wanted to highlight the work that Vital Arts did in 2022 to survey all of the data that they could find about artists specifically in the Bay Area. And Vital Arts is in the process right now of conducting more robust data, but we can see right here some key findings. And the little pie chart represents a small portion of artists. There was Vital Arts surveyed about 600 Bay Area artists and cultural workers, and the National Endowment of the Arts estimated that there are about 75,760 arts workers in the Bay between 2015 and 2019. And so the sample size is pretty small, but I mean, I can say from my experience that it does really represent myself, my friends, and what we've all kind of lived through since I've been here, 2008 to 2021. So we've got 50% of people who responded to Vital Arts survey reported that they were renting on a month-to-month lease for their housing and their commercial spaces. And of that, 77% of renting artists and cultural workers are rent burdened or severely rent burdened, meaning that they're spending a disproportionate amount of their income just to pay their rent. And I think in the past, it was said that if you kept your expenses under 25% of your income, then that would allow you to save and live your life and, invest and do all of these things that we were told was very important by the older generations in order to set ourselves up for later in life. And that's just not possible for a lot of artists here in the Bay. Also, 88% of artists surveyed held bachelor's degree or higher. So this is an extremely educated population, and they're still not able to bring in the levels of income needed in this area in order to support themselves. And 82% of artists in Berkeley specifically reported that they do their creative work inside their housing spaces. And over half of them required extra ventilation for the work that they do. And I just wanted to really draw that out because there's limited studio space as well, and most of it's not affordable either. I think I looked at a private space, it was maybe 10 by 10. It was $800 a month. That used to be what you could get a one-bedroom apartment here for. It still should be what a one-bedroom apartment should be. So most artists work and run businesses from their homes, and this means that their housing is a creative space. And so for many artists, housing stability and safety is directly tied to their creative stability. So that was a lot of numbers, but I'm really hoping it gave an overview of what the landscape looks like. And you might be like, yeah, I'm in it, I already know. And so I want to get into how AST is going to be addressing these disparities through our program objectives. Without stable and affordable housing, the cultural fabric of San Francisco, Berkeley, Oakland, even all the way down to the South Bay, it risks significant loss. So artists, we really contribute to the community's vitality, economy, and identity. And so we want to make sure that they can afford to live and work here. Um, and so we've got 4 key program objectives, and I'll walk you through each one. They are preserve, educate, create, and grow. So the first one revolves around building a community-specific portfolio. So we have finished our first year, and AST has secured 2 single-family property bequests from local, very renowned elder artists. So we're really proud to be able to support our community members in being able to leave a legacy that really is mutual aid, artist to artist mutual aid. And this will it will grant stability to the next people who are able to live in those homes. And we're in the process of assessing a variety of properties, but our commitment will always be first to the current tenants of any property that we acquire. And so this may include our elder property donors if they decide that they want to do what's called aging in place, which means that the property would come to us, but they want to continue living there for as long as possible. Right now, AST is prioritizing opportunities that are really based around home ownership and getting artists into stable housing. And so we'll expand our portfolio through direct donations, through bequests, through below market purchases, and have the option to age in place for our elderly donors. The next pillar of our programming is going to be our education. And as a method of community outreach, we're going to be launching this programming in the fall. We're going to partner with local arts and housing organizations to create workshops and classes for our community on a variety of topics. And these are just a few of the potentials. So we've got estate planning, financial literacy, CLT homeownership, structuring cooperatives, as well as qualifying for low-income housing programs. And so we'll develop our educational programming based on the real described needs of our community. We can see already what those might be, but we are going to be collecting more data and more input on what artists specifically feel like they really need. And so this is a way that we can serve our community beyond whatever property opportunities that we'll be having. So the next pillar is a build as we go. And so a huge goal for AST is going to be to share what we learn as we grow to other regional organizations so that artists everywhere can have access to the same kind of stability provided by the Community Land Trust model in the way that AST is setting it up. And our final pillar is what's called impact investment. And AST's Impact Investment Fund presents a limited return investment opportunity for our philanthropic community that enables AST to purchase and renovate properties. And it also supports our Aging in Place program. So this is a non-traditional style of investment with a lower rate of return than capital investment. And it allows for money to be put to use in ways that will make a difference in our community. So there are other land trusts that serve artists and other community land trusts that serve a wide range of people that aren't specifically artists. So what makes AST special is that we really have deep roots in the regional arts community. All of our staff at this time, and even down to our contractors at this point, have or are currently arts and culture workers, and this includes sound and visual artists to AST's director, Meg Schiffler, who I believe is in the room, who spent 17 years working for the City of San Francisco's Arts Commission. Our advisory council is a big help to us as well. This is a board or a council made up of highly respected and renowned working artists who have deep roots and long history in the Bay Area, and they represent many disciplines and cultural communities. And so they're really giving us input as we're setting our foundation about how we can do things like, how do we define an artist? And, how are we going to go through the selection process? What educational programs are most important for artists? What did they wish that they had had in their career earlier on when it comes to artists and connecting them with housing? And we're really relying on them for that kind of deeper insight into our community. Our incubation partners are also a big thing that makes us special. So we work directly with artist advocacy, with Vital Arts, and with Northern California Land Trust and their 50-year history of CLT property management and setting up collective ownership. And then the opportunity to build a replicable model is a really big key for us as well. The Bay Area in general is known for championing new ideas and ways of living in community that are non-traditional. And we're also known for grassroots advocacy. So AST is a product of this legacy in this current housing crisis. And then the last one I think is the most key. I think artists are more comfortable than most in considering collective ownership as a viable solution to the problem of affordable housing. Um, it's something that my friends and I talk about all the time. Like, why don't we just buy a property altogether? And like, we already have so many skills. We could build this. We could have a ceramic studio. We could put in a pizza oven, like they're really thinking about how to bring community together in order to kind of carve out the life that we want. And I think that that's really the driving part of what makes AST special is the artists. So Artist Space Trust currently is in year 2. And our goals for right now are to continue to work with private donors and philanthropy to build our portfolio, to grow that impact investment fund. And then we're working right now to really clearly define our definition of who is an artist. A lot of the data that I showed earlier, it came from government sources, and the way that they defined artist is very different than how a lot of people might think of an artist. And so we really want to get clear on who it is that we're serving and how we can meet their needs. We're going to be launching our educational program in the fall of 2024. So if you don't already, go ahead and follow us on social media or on LinkedIn, because when we have the information about our first classes, we'll be sending that out so that everybody can participate. And we're also currently beginning to work in coalition with other local organizations, housing and artist orgs in the Bay, to address the specific needs of artists across the Bay Area. So right now, if you want to get involved beyond this presentation, you can always donate directly to AST or contact us if you know of any properties that are coming available, or if you have people in your life that have expressed that they would like to build a legacy for artists, definitely put them in contact with us. You can also partner with AST for the educational programming. I know we have a lot of artists and educators here. Be sure to follow and subscribe to our newsletter, because that's where most of our information gets put out. We'll be doing presentations like this periodically, but we don't have a set schedule yet. So, and then you can spread the word about AST. Be like, hey, I heard about this thing that was really interesting. And even if you don't get directly involved with us, you might end up being able to start your own collective or CLT, and we'd love to hear about it. And if you want to talk directly to us, you can contact AST's director, Meg Schiffler, and that's meg.schiffler@artistspacetrust.org, or you can also reach out to me, kiana.ellis@artistspacetrust.org. And just finally, I wanted to highlight right now in our baby stage, we have really wonderful early funders, and these are primarily arts funders. We've got the Hellman Foundation, Halloran Foundation, Rainin, San Francisco Foundation, and Hewlett. And they have really been instrumental in allowing us to begin this work. But as you know, the business of real estate is an expensive one. So we're looking to partner with other organizations as well and kind of grow our impact through our funding. So Thank you so much for sitting through all of that. I'm going to go ahead and stop my share now, and we can dive into a conversation, and I'll finally be able to see all of your chats and your Q&As. So if you asked a question and I haven't seen it yet, so I apologize.
We don't have any questions yet, but there's such a amazing group of people in this room, and so I really encourage, this is a newer community project. Vital Arts is also re-entering the space, and I think that so much of our work relies on collaboration and really understanding the depth and diversity of both housing needs and artist needs. And so I just invite anyone to bring up anything that's coming to their mind around displacement, any information that, Kiana presented that is new to you, or makes you think about the displacement issue a little bit differently.
Absolutely. I am curious too. I see we do have some artists here.
You can go ahead and raise your hand or pop in if you like. Jonathan, go ahead. Why don't you start?
Yeah, thank you so much. I was just curious how one gets around discrimination laws by earmarking housing just for artists. Um, it's come up before, and I'm just trying to figure out how that plays out.
Absolutely. That's a really great question. And we are still in the process of figuring out our artist selection. I can say that we will not be getting around any housing laws. And so what you're referring to is that there are very specific governance on who can qualify for fair housing. And so a big part of what we're going to be doing is really diving into our community and educating them about how they can be prepared to be applicants at our properties.
And I'll pop in on that question also. I think what I think you're referring to, Jonathan, is actually the bigger fair housing issue, which is a really it's just really interesting how I think it's something that a lot of folks are grappling with. I know in San Francisco, there's now there's like teacher focused housing, and that is now becoming like a fair housing issue. So there's a lot of work that we have to figure out in terms of one, thinking about what makes a housing process equitable and truly equitable, and being able to stay with what our values are and what fighting displacement is all about, and then also navigating the ways that something like fair housing might be ironically weaponized, and that's a conversation that we're all having together right now, and we all need to continue to have together. Amber is on stack, and then I have a question. Maybe let's go to Edward's question because it's very short. In the Q&A, Edward asks, I'm an artist living in the Bay Area for 10 years. When will AST roll out home ownership opportunities for artists?
Sure,
For
I can one. I mean, right now it's as we gain properties, each property will have its own specific timeline. And so right now we do not have any properties that are available for sale, but we are really tied into the CLT network, and CLT is going to be having offerings and things like that. And so just stay really tied in with us, and we'll be announcing that, and we'll be announcing our goal is to have our community be able to engage in education programs and training so that when that does happen for AST, they're ready.
And I hope that answered your question, Edward. Let's move on to Amber, and then there are some cool, helpful comments in the chat also. Actually, Meg, do you wanna pop in really fast and answer something?
Yeah, hi. This is Meg Schiffler, the inaugural director of Artist Space Trust. And the idea of when properties will be available to artists is an interesting one and tricky one. And I want to answer that in a slightly different way, in that a lot of our initial properties are being bequeathed or left to us in the will of elderly artists in our community. And these artists are also low income artists. They just happen to have been able to buy their properties in the 1960s, 70s, or 80s. So we will be part of their care team until they pass and really invest. So, part of the answer is we already have artists in our properties to care for, especially these elder donor artists. And then we don't know when they're going to pass. When they do, then we'll transfer the property over to another artist owner. And the other thing is, if we take over, which we're looking at making our first purchase this year of a live workspace or warehouse space for housing and or creative space, our first objective, and legally our first objective, will be to the tenants that are currently in place. And so unless we build something new, which is not really part of our initial game plan, it's to preserve spaces that currently exist, then our first commitment will be to stabilize the housing of the current tenants. So if that makes sense, so we'll have artists in our properties now and forever, but the real question is when will they turn around so that we can put new artists in those spaces? That's the big question that we don't know the answer to yet. So hang on. Thanks for letting me answer that.
Of course. And I just want to flag for time, and Amber was waiting for a second. So I want Amber, you're up.
Well, I think I put the resources, a link to AB 812 in the link, and a map that's circled around Emeryville. And what it is that any place in California that has a cultural district, Emeryville has one of these state designated cultural districts with a capital C and a capital D. Half a mile around there can dedicate housing. This was back to the fair housing question, directly to designate 10% of that to artists. So it's a new state law. So I just thought I'd put that out there as it's in the intersection of this. And thank you for the work that you're doing. It's a little different. Just thought I'd put it out there.
That's amazing. Thank you for that. We have such knowledge in the chat, y'all.
Yeah, and AST and Vital Arts are actually a part of a working group that is centered on kind of trying to build this toolkit. And I think that's really useful. And there's been a lot of, Rashida, thank you for all of that information in the chat as well. Because there's a lot of confusion around AB 812, but it's really, I don't know, it's always exciting to see that people are tapped in and paying attention. And that's how we've been talking to folks about AB 812 as well, as this way to really kind of contextualize the fair housing issue. So yeah. Josh, I saw your hand raised earlier. Do you have anything you want to add?
Sure. Just on the fair housing issue, and you mentioned teacher housing as well. I think the best practice, San Francisco has followed some of the best practices, particularly with teacher housing, by doing a disparity study. Any governmental entity can designate artist housing as, or any other specific group of housing as a public need if they meet certain hurdles of showing that it doesn't otherwise violate fair housing law. So there is a pathway to doing it, although having a disparity study to ensure that there's no discrimination is often a good way to do it. There's much more to say on this, but I'll leave it at that.
Thank you so much.
Anything else? I just want to give a bit, I feel like seeing the data illustrated through your graphics, Kiana, was really helpful for me. And this is data that I feel like we're sitting with and sifting through and talking about all the time. And so, but to just see those numbers in that way was really useful for myself. Yeah.
Absolutely. We're at such a moment right now of a generational shift of wealth and ownership in this country. And I think in the months that I've been at AST so far, it's really become apparent to me that our donors really care about this community. And there's just a lot that needs to be done. And going back to the properties question and when they'll be ready, a lot of it's going to be on a property to property basis. You know, we investigate opportunities that come to us, and sometimes it's a single family home with somebody who wants to continue living there as long as possible. And sometimes it's a multi-unit building that, you know, the owner's trying to get rid of, and it would be the opportunity for us to renovate it too. So it will kind of just depend on how time treats us and what opportunities come to us.
Hi, this is ASIN at NCLT. One of the things that the data really made me think about is first the number or the percentage of artists who use their homes as workplaces, and sort of thinking about how these are, you know, essentially workshops or workplaces, and also thinking about kind of the office and retail collapse happening at the moment and opportunities for conversions. Would just love to hear how you guys are thinking about how like urban space really be sort of challenged and changed with this framework.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like it would be wonderful to get artists into places where there's already space for uh commercial and residential housing as well. I think in the Bay Area there aren't a whole lot of areas where it's zoned for commercial and residential, but we see those buildings going up in areas across the different counties. And so I know that right now there are a number of organizations that are working to build into office spaces and buildings and things like that. We haven't seen any properties like that come our way just yet.
This is Meg again. I had a great meeting with Josh Simon the other day, and Josh looked at me and said, wait a minute, artists working in their homes, that means that they have a home-based business.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, yeah, every artist who does their work in their house has a home-based business. And then we talked about that for a little while and how that would affect, you know, zoning and housing and how we frame our project. And so, Asen, thank you for the question. I think we're just bringing this idea of home-based businesses as artists into frame right now. And thanks to Josh for that.
Yeah, and I do want to say that there are I mean, I think that there's so many ways to look at the kind of multitude of issues that you just mentioned, Asen, where, you know, there's new developments and then there's the ground floors, or there's you know, older developments and then they are potentially, you know, there could be some code negotiation, there could be a live work situation, or, you know, like our downtowns are struggling. And so is this a time for us to actually advocate and think of some of those downtown spaces as alternative spaces, or what are the moves that need to happen to kind of push that? Yeah, I think there's a lot of, we're in a really hot time right now. That's what I'm feeling. I think that's what other people are feeling too. I would love to know if I'll get a little hand raise or something if that's what folks are feeling, because we are in the crux of and it's not just artist specific, you know, we are in the crux of a really intensive housing crisis. We are also in a time where there is a lot of change happening around legislation in regards to housing and space. There's a lot of urgency to revitalize and bring in, you know, artists to various spaces. And I think that, yeah, I don't know. I really feel like, you know, again, like all of our different organizations, AST, I think is in such a powerful position to really, yeah, help build this framework around what is it that artists need, you know, and what makes something an artist housing. So yeah.
And once again, I really feel like the strength of what we're doing is going to be in showing others how it can be done as well. So not every AST doesn't have to own every property in the Bay that is artist housing, you know? And we really can spread the word and teach people how to come together and do this when they are presented with opportunities so that they can be in control of their own life and creative output as well. Well, that's wonderful. Does anybody else have any questions or comments, clarification? I see something in the Q&A. Oh, it says answered. Kristen, yeah, go ahead. Good to hear from you.
Hey, Kiana. Hi, how are you?
Hi.
Sorry, I'm staying off screen because I'm working from home today. Working from home in my bedroom, but I don't have, I'm not an expert in this area, but it is an area of interest to me. And as someone who's worked in municipal government in San Francisco and in Oakland for too long, this is definitely a topic that keeps coming up. When I was wearing another hat as an acting manager, I was involved in the work. Josh was involved in this. He knows it very well. Around the mayor of Oakland's affordable housing task force, which included a very specific uh, cohort looking at artist housing and live workspace. A lot of, you know, really interesting and important work was done there. And we also conducted a survey where we had 900 respondents. It was a really great response regarding artists and their sense of security or vulnerability in their housing and workspaces. But what I'm thinking about it now and have been following some of the work you're doing here, it's been, was almost 10 years ago that we did that survey. And so much has changed since then, as we were talking about post-pandemic and where people are living and working. And of course, cities are all looking at their downtowns and how they're changing, how to reactivate and reanimate both with the people that are there by giving them space to do that work, and also like through our downtown specific plan, which is looking at some rezoning and everything Amber was alluding to relating to cultural districts. So what I wanted to just say here as someone who works inside city government, even though I'm not in this space specifically, is this is exactly what you need to be doing. Like having this event, having it be promoted as part of EBHO's, you know, monthly activities, coming to those meetings, having that data ready and prepared to make your arguments when, and, you know, and just having a seat at the table, because so many elected officials are like just pulled in so many different directions. And, you know, it's unfortunate, but it does mean that, you know, we have to rely on ourselves and the artist community to help people focus on the opportunities and how they can help to support that. So I just wanted to commend you all for doing the work and keep showing up. Make sure that, you know, that the council members know, but also that our, you know, colleagues in planning and building and in our own Department of Economic and Workforce Development are aware of what you're doing. And so, you know, we keep looking for those opportunities to um, help promote this, where, you know, it takes a village, as they say.
Absolutely. And thanks for that insight. Really appreciate it. Yes, I know this is where we really rely on Charmy and the work that Vital Arts is doing as well.
Yeah, we are we're, you know, we're really trying to launch in this process, right? We're in the process of launching our Bay Area artist census, and we're attempting to make this a regional census. So while we will have like hubs in various counties and cities, housing, as we all know, is a regional issue. And we're really hoping to make this one an artist-led project to really understand the breadth of material concerns that artists have in this moment. But I don't know. I'm really hoping that this will be like a connective project for all of us and for, for everyone who's in this sphere to really kind of tap in and be like, okay, this is our opportunity to like really paint the picture of what our circumstances and what our needs are. So I'm hoping that everyone in this room can kind of tap in whenever possible with that project as well.
Absolutely. All right, anybody have any final questions or comments? Wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for joining us today and for finding out a little bit more about Artist Space Trust. I hope it was informative for you. And you can feel free to reach out to Sharmi or myself or Meg as well if you have any questions or if you want to talk more about AST and the work that we're doing and how we're going to be building from here to where we want to go. So thank you all so much. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a good one.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Happy Wednesday.